Welcome back into Talking Fitchburg, continuing our coverage on the Department of Ag Trade Consumer Protection Top 10 Complaint Lists. Here at number 5 and moving down this year, identity theft at 468 complaints. Boy, I feel like every other episode of updates we've done here somehow crisscrosses identity theft or warning people of identity theft. So surprised that it's at the top 5.
Yeah, well, in this category, I feel like is underreported. As you said, it went down in numbers, 150 down. Switch spots, it went down from 4 to 5. And I feel like that is because you don't know you're a victim until you know you're a victim.
Because don't know until you know. I've heard that on a few shows. I think that's
very wise, right?
Yes.
You sit there and you don't need that loan and things are happening in the background, and until you recognize that red flag or you need that loan, you may not know your identity's been compromised. We heard a lot from consumers about those takeovers of online accounts, both social media and financial accounts, and that is where you need to be changing those passwords. You need to be sure your friends and family are telling you when they get a bizarre message from you when you can't gain access. We're there to try and help you regain control of those accounts. That's a difficult procedure, and we don't have the magic button on it, but we found some success in our mediation efforts there. And then keeping track of your data breaches and your information, putting those security freezes in place, putting those fraud alerts on, and responding when you see information changes there.
How can you ever really verify, like, if a case is open with you, like, do you really ever get it back? Like, what does that long game look like?
Exactly. What does that with identity theft in general, what does the long game look like? Because it will depend on the type of identity theft.
Sure.
And with the compromise, it'll depend on the type of information. If it's your social security number, you're going to have to watch forever. If it's that one credit card, well, great. You can get a new card, you can get a new card number. You could cancel the card and move on to a different credit card company. And if that's all they had, that's financial identity theft. We could be done. But other things can go long-term to your entire life where you will always need to monitor. I also want to make note, some of the decrease in complaint numbers here is because we've worked with Department of Revenue that they are directly handling complaints related to tax identity theft now. And so that is fabulous. So it's a one agency process, but it also reflects a decrease because we don't include tax ID theft complaints then.
Well, I feel like since even first starting talking about it, we're pretty consistent about, beware, like if it's a scam, also beware of identity theft. If it's this, beware of it. Like, I feel like it's always tagged on to a lot of that stuff. So maybe a little awareness too, but partners are good.
I am
Seems
hopeful.
to be a theme today. It's a really good thing. So either way, moving on then, telecommunications, which moved up. So that swapped over identity theft. Telecommunications, there's a lot of things in here. What do you say, why it went up? I don't know. There's just so many. I don't even know where to start. I want to ask you, like, what about the internet? What about TV? What about that? There's so much.
And you're exactly right. That's all those things. Telecommunications is that either bundled package of services or the individuals of your internet service provider, your cell phone, your landline, your cable, your satellite. So it depends what you have. So it's any one or multiples of those. You're going to see a lot of issues related to billing disputes. What does your contract represent that relationship is supposed to be? What services are you supposed to receive at what rate, what speed? And so we see those types of issues, terminations, disconnections, cancellation issues, and just the switching. They're still billing me, but I canceled and I moved on. So a lot of complaints there. I will say we also had a major case this last year that we resolved with a telecommunication provider that was misrepresenting the monthly price of internet service, and we were able to resolve that for $450,000. Individual consumers didn't get that. That went back to the general school fund because the consumers had the opportunity to enter a class action lawsuit years before.
I think it's good to know, though, that, if you were, these is another one of those where you want to understand what you're getting yourself into, but also understand what is the rights that you have in telecommunications, because it's complicated area. All these areas are complicated, but, really kind of understanding, I think down to internet speed, like what happens if you lose your internet for 5 days in a row and you're still getting charged, what is the rules there? Any advice for people just to take that extra time, really say, Michelle says, you really should read your fine print on these things?
Well, I say go look at the fact sheet that we have about this and learn what those rules are and what process you have to follow, and then you can compare it to your contract. But there are certain things in the administrative rules and the statutes that say, if this happens, and then I take this action and notify them that I have an outage, and if it lasts this long, then I'm supposed to get this kind of credit versus that kind of credit. But consumers have an obligation to activate that, if you will. So they need to know that. And that's where we have it in our fact sheet.
That's interesting. Fact sheet. You want to definitely check that out afterwards as well. All right, jumping into the top three. No changes in the top three here, but still not surprising to me. So at number 3 here, home improvement complaints. Again, one of those, I like to say, protecting that asset, but there's a lot of things that come into the home improvement world there's a lot of fine print stuff, I'm suspecting.
There's a lot of contract relationships. There's a lot of movement of parts. Home improvement, if it's out exterior work, it's dependent upon the weather and what was your agreement, and did the contractor get sick, or is he still available? And that's some of the things we hear from consumers about. Boy, I just haven't heard from him for a month. He says his mom was sick, and now I paid him all this money and he's never showed up to do this work. Versus they picked the wrong board color for my deck. You see the spectrum, because
Sure.
It's interior as well. So it's drywalling, it's new kitchen remodels and bathroom remodels and plumbing and electrical and solar panels. So it's a lot of different things that make up this category. So again, you're going to have work that's not performed, delays in performance, failing to provide the services or the materials, honoring warranties. And my favorite consumer protection right, I think, is your right to receive a lien waiver when you make a payment. You have to assert that. A contractor has an obligation to inform you you have that right. We had a lot of not disclosing that right to consumers. That doesn't mean a consumer can't activate it. Just because they didn't get disclosed, you can still, every time you write a check or make that payment, say, lien waiver, please. And then you're protected from the suppliers and the subcontractors that are part of the job, should the contractor not be making those payments.
I think, too, there's still disruptions in the chain. We think back to 2020 when things changed, obviously, but there are still things that are still outstanding, whether it's hard to get materials, still hard to get work. Limited companies now, there's less than there were before. There's a lot of factors in doing this, but when you go back to some of your fact sheets, I think there is a great one on just general contracts and knowing your rights before you're entering into it, whether you're building a house, doing additions, or whatever. Right. Good to review, and if you're going out for bid, too, and trying to meet with these folks to ask some of these questions, maybe to learn a little bit more, like what happens if you do call in, say,
right.
Or whatever.
I like this one, and I like to say do a couple things with it. It's that time of year when people are planning their project and going to home shows. Yeah. So have it in your bag. You can reference it before you sign a contract. You can cross-reference. Do they have everything I need? I also like it if people keep this handy or in their emergency kit. Because when we have weather-related incidents and you need to respond quickly to fix the hole that's in the roof because a tree fell over in the storm, you don't just react. You can do so with very specific intention. Take a minute to look at your resources. And again, I like to try and encourage people to have the resources they'll go to for the different situations. Talk to your insurance agent. Who should I turn to? Get the list from the neighbors now. If they just had their roof done, do you like it? Did they like it? Put that person in your reference bag so you have it should we need those things. And certainly this last year in 2025, we experienced a number of weather-related incidents all the way up to fall with all the flooding.
I was going to say, I think of the Milwaukee floods this year were devastating, and that's a long-term effect. And yeah, everybody's calling for help at that point. And yeah, and you don't always think in that moment, right? You are trying to fix a crisis. You might not really think about all those fine print things. I like that. I don't even have that in my emergency kit, and I like to think I'm prepared for anything. So
it's a one sheet of paper, two-sided, trifold.
Well, I am going to do that moving forward, but that is really great information. Jumping to number 2, telemarketing. Oh boy, there it is, always at the top. Why?
Always at the top, but look at that. The number's down, 230 complaints, only 1,283 complaints. It's down. You and I have talked over the years where it was over 4,600 complaints. The number's going down, but we know consumers aren't truly experiencing less. So we're not getting those reports and those complaints. I guess I'm begging to be sure people still file them. What has changed? Technology's changed. So we know that it's a scam. We have the label on our phone. I've told you don't answer the phone. You know not to answer the phone. You're not answering the phone. Great. That's a huge success. But we still need to know what's circulating for advisories. But this is the phishing and the spoofing scams, the imposter scams, robocalls, harassment. It's also the do not call list. We get those calls from consumers and those complaints that are on the do not call list. Someone is soliciting them by phone. That person's not supposed to do that. They are not either registered as a telemarketer or they're not following the laws. And we are following on those cases and taking those enforcement actions and trying to resolve those as well.
I dare to ask this, but I'm going to anyways. We want to report these things, right?
We do.
But if you're getting thousands of them every day, like, is it, if you see a pattern, like, do you have any recommendations as far as how to, like, report on some of those?
Well, people have fatigue in reporting, and because they're hanging up, they're not getting harmed, and they're probably less annoyed because they're just ignoring it, and some are just going. So in that way, that's great, but if it's a particular scam, we need to know to help others prevent becoming victimized. We have a fast track form on our website. That means we're not going to follow up with you, but you can go on the website, you can answer about 5 questions, enter the phone number, tell us what the issue is, what phone number did they call, and we're going to follow, we're going to look at the trends, we're going to categorize these things and understand. But you won't get followed up with, we won't bother you again, and we'll have that information. So mark that on your cell phone, and when you get them, pop them in before you go to bed at night.
Well, I think, again, just as you said, I mean, there is some fatigue to that if you're seeing it all the time. You're like, oh, no, right. But if we do report it, we'll have a better shot at maybe stopping, another entity from doing it. And maybe that entity is representing multiple. You never know.
Right.
So, I mean, it helps. Every little thing helps.
Every little thing helps you and helps your neighbor.
All right, the final one, and continuing to be number 1, is landlord-tenant issues. And I think you have a nice guide for this one that's just outside of that. But as you look at this year, and it says it's been the number 1 complaint since 2022. What is going on here? Why can't we get this? We want to get this one down. Like, go up to number 5. Move out of the way.
There's a few things happening here. One, it took the number 1 spot when telemarketing technology got better. The federal laws changed, and you had to do that labeling, so that number went down. So this position changed as a result. But now we're seeing the increase in complaints, too. I mean, it's not just sitting at 1,200 and 1,400 complaints. We're at 2,620 complaints. Many more people are renting. There is a lot more rental housing. There's probably less owners to some of that rental housing, so those relationships might be getting fatigued a bit. And these are longer term relationships, and they're emotional relationships. It's where an individual goes to rest, rejuvenate, raise their family, engage in fun, and that may conflict with the rules of the landlord, who knows, but that's their personal investment. If they're smaller landlords, if they're larger, do they have the resources for every tenant that they have, the responsiveness? I think some of the spike, I know some of the spike that we had in 2025 is related to the floods. Individuals impacted by that, and how do they navigate that space? They don't own it. Their belongings are things being remediated, getting in touch with the landlord, them being overwhelmed with some of those properties. What's good about this, I think, is more than 5,000 contacts to the hotline. That's a quarter of the contacts to the hotline overall were about landlord-tenant. So people are asking questions in advance before they're entering into contracts. We're hearing from landlords that are asking questions about their responsibilities. And because we're doing more education, maybe that also means more people know we're here to file their complaints.
I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, I like that too.
I know everybody's watching this show. I mean, they're writing this down.
Yeah.
And in all fairness, I think you guys you've stepped up. I mean, you use this list, and this leads to a good question. I mean, the data the things you bring to this show and that you bring monthly are driven off the top 10 and the things that you're working on. So do you feel like that education stuff that you're working on is having impacts? I look at those phone calls and say, yes, there's things. And you've developed new tools, like the resource guide or what I'm putting my emergency kit here real soon. But how is that education stuff going and work into this top 10 list?
Yeah, well, certainly we've developed toolkits now. I mean, back in September, we talked about our outreach toolkits of those topic areas, trying to inform younger consumers on these key issues. They're new consumers up front with educator guides and things, more poster campaigns and PSAs. Yes, we are driving that information based on what we're seeing here, as well as what we're getting contacted about. This is the list of complaints. People take the time to write it down. We also look at the data when we're doing our outreach as to who's calling us about what. Scams and frauds, what are they? What are the key issues? And so we need to be sure we're doing that education as well.
It's a lot of information. It's a lot of work that's happening behind the scenes. And don't be intimidated. Know that there's a resource out there. So to wrap this in a nice, pretty bow, if you haven't checked out your guys' website and the tools that you referenced today, you got to get there because there's a lot of helpful stuff. Things you probably would have never thought about, like putting it in your toolkit. Like, I just think those such good ideas, but it starts at the website.
Yeah, absolutely. Please go to datcp.wi.gov and look at all those resources. We have them in English and in Spanish, so they're available in those two languages. We also have an auto translator for other languages if needed, and there's just a ton of information. There's links to our YouTube videos as well if you want to have someone talking to you rather than reading it.
It's pretty impressive. I think you guys do some amazing work there. And I love going through this list each and every year, kind of finding out kind of what happened, throughout the year. The weather thing, though, definitely is starting to come into play. And that seems to be like we've got to look at a lot of different factors because weather can affect vehicles. It can affect homes. It can affect going to work. It seems like something, vacation. Yeah. So it's just something to put in the back of the mind. Like, we got to be prepared for that.
Right. Well, I'll take your gratitude on behalf of the entire team. They're the ones that are doing the hard work and talking to the consumers and analyzing everything. And they're really trying to give it their all, and they do every day. So I hope consumers reach out with their issues and questions and utilize their skills and talents.
They love talking to you. I'm telling you, they like talking. Not just here. I mean, they're ready to take your questions right away. So, Michelle, thank you so much. Really appreciate the time and look forward to continuing to do more outreach.
Well, thank you.